If I roll a pair of dice, how many different outcomes are there? That'll be one of them that we explore, and then some various others. But yeah, we're just talking about how we can get how many ways something can occur. We'll talk about several methods. The first one is just pretty direct. It's just listing the ways out. That's one way you can do it. Now, of course, when you get thousands of ways that things can occur, you don't want to list them all out, and so we'll explore other ways of doing counting, more mathematically, I guess you might say. But yeah, it's really just all about how many ways something can occur, an event, how many ways an event can occur. Now, I say listing, but let me kind of clarify that a little bit. Let's call it systematic listing. Especially when you get larger groups, you want to have some type of system, so we'll kind of be emphasizing that as we go along, coming up with some type of system that allows us to figure out how many ways something can occur. All right, so let's start with coins. If I flip two coins, how many possibilities are there? You got 4? Okay, so yeah, we list those out. Here's one way of doing it. I can get 2 heads. I can get 2 tails. And then I could have heads and a tail. And then note that we are making kind of distinction between first coin and second coin. So heads, tails is going to be different than tails, heads. So yes, there are 4 different outcomes here. Okay? 4 is the answer there. Okay? What about if we flip 3 coins? How many possibilities are? Well, again, we can have all heads. Heads, heads, heads. We can have all tails. Tails, tails, tails. But then we can have variations of heads and tails, right? We could have 2 heads and 1 tail. Now, again, making a distinction between first, second, and third coin, that's one possibility with 2 heads and 1 tail. But there's also a couple others, right? I could have them in a different order, the tails in a different spot, so to speak. I could have a heads, tails, heads, or I could have the tails and then the heads, heads. That would be 3 different ones. See what I'm saying? All right, what else could I have? 2 tails, 1 head. And that could occur different ways. Tails, heads, tails, or heads, tails, tails. That would about cover it, wouldn't it? Can you think of any others? We've got 3 heads, 3 tails, 2 heads, 1 tail, 2 tails, 1 head. That's about it. No other options available. Okay? So how many are there? 8 altogether. 8 altogether. Okay? All right. Now, the other, let me mention here something else that the book might mention somewhere along the way. Let me mention it to you here. Let's do this same listing. You know, our system was, you know, we did the 3 heads, the 3 tails, and then we did the 2 heads and 1 tail, and then we did the 2 tails and 1 head. That was kind of our system there. Well, there's also another system that that can be utilized. It'll help us in particular in one spot here when I get to it. But let me show you the 3 coins, the tree diagram for 3 coins. It's called a tree diagram. You'll see why that's called that in just a second. That's called a tree diagram. What you do, we're flipping 3 coins. So I'm going to do the first coin here, second coin, and then third coin. And then the results will be over here. Okay, so we start with the first coin, and the first coin could either be heads or tails, right? So I'm going to space those out a little bit, heads or tails, because what I'm then going to do is branch off to the second coin. If the first coin is heads, then the second coin could be either a heads or tails again, right? First coin's head. So I can branch off of my first coin being heads to heads or tails. I can do the same thing for the tails on the first coin though, right? I can branch off of it to be heads or tails as well. Okay? All right, well, we still have a third coin. So I'm going to branch off for it. Well, if the second coin is this heads, then what could the third coin be? Couldn't the third coin be heads or tails again? Yep. So we've got to branch off of it. Well, if this is the second coin here, then what could the third coin be? Heads or tails again. So you get the idea. We're branching off of each one of these, heads or tails each time. With me up on that? Well, look at this. If I trace my steps all the way back, this first one would be what? Heads, heads, heads. Follow the branches there. Then the second one would be heads, heads, tails. The third one would be heads, tails, heads. Fourth one is heads, tails, tails. Tails, heads, heads. Tails, heads, tails. Tails, tails, heads. And last but not least, tails, tails, tails. Okay, so may not have been totally necessary there, but just to show you an example of what is called a tree diagram, which, like I said, I'll make a point about it more in just a second, but it's another way to do your listing. All right, with me, does it look okay? All right. Well, let's we'll flip coins some as we go, but we'll also do some other things. Another one we'll do is roll dice, or think about rolling dice, or actually roll the dice. But first of all, if I roll a die, what are the possibilities there? Well, die meaning singular of dice, okay? So if you're talking about what? The die being the number cubes, what are the possibilities there? Usually it's 6 sides, 1 through 6, right? Each one has a different number of dots on it. So anyway, yeah, die may or may not know that word, but anyway, there's 6 possibilities when you roll a die. Okay, now, when I roll a pair of dice, how many possibilities you got on that? Well, if we want to, we can arrange this. May be helpful to think of this kind of in a table format. I've got two dice here. Call it die 1 and die 2. And on die 1, we could have 1 through 6. On die 2, we could have 1 through 6 as well. Tell you what, I think the book goes with it like this. Die 1 on the left there. But anyway, arrange it like this because here's the possibilities. I could have 1 on the die 1 and 1 on the die 2. So let's just call that one 1, 1. Then I could have 1 on die 1 and 2 on die 2. I'm going to have 1 on die 1 and 3 on die 2. 1, 4, 1, 5, 1, 6. For the first line. Then the second line would be 2 on the first die, and then 1, and then 2, 2, 3, 2, 4, 2, 5, 2, 6, etc., etc., etc. We could do that all through there. With me? Is this okay? So how many we got? Well, we got 6 lines, and each one's got 6 in it. That's 36, isn't it? I don't know if I'm going to write all those out, but you can finish it out if you want to, and it's in the book. They have the table there too in this chapter. So how many possibilities? 36, right? 6 lines of 6 each. That's 36. Okay? All right. Now, sometimes what they'll do is they'll ask us some other questions about our table here, or the pair of dice. So how many of these, how many rows are have a sum of 4? Well, of course, you just want to list those out. You got 1, 3, you got 2, 2, but be careful there because I didn't point this out, but note here, it's kind of the same as with the coin problem there. You know, 2, 1 is different than 1, 2. You notice it's both of those are listed, and 3, 1 is different than 1, 3. So that comes into play here. Yeah, 1, 3 is a sum of 4, and 2, 2. But what else? How about 3, 1? Yeah, that's a different roll. So there's three ways of doing that. So be sure to include everything on that list there, like you do on the coins. Flip them around if it changes it. All right. So how many are there? Have a sum of 9. Well, what would be one of them? Or 2 of them? 3, 6. Okay. Well, 3, 6 is, then 6, 3 is also. What else? 5, 4. Well, 5, 4 is, 4, 5 is 2. Any others? 2, 7? No. The die only goes up to 6, doesn't it? So